Hello everyone, Kurt Alfred here, and welcome back to another episode from Holfeder Labs. This week we're going to be continuing on in regards to our mapping ourselves out with the Segno and looking at a lot of the lessons that we can kind of unfold and hopefully build forward as far as for our historical martial arts and whatnot. And this week, however, we're going to be utilizing the Segno to check our structure, but we're also going to be looking at two of Fiore's Posta positions, structures of abbracciare, and we're going to look at them not just so much in like how we use them, but also some other lessons that we might learn in practicing them and some of the anatomical things that happen within our bodies. So with that being the case here, let's get into it. So once again, we have our Segno labeled out for us right here, and again, I'm utilizing this training sword here to be able to point out directions on here as needed. I won't necessarily be needing this very much today. However, we are going to start seeing what happens when I hold this in certain ways, when I make different shapes, and again, and what that may teach us about alignment and whatnot. So we'll be looking at the Segno here and then kind of also matching up what maybe this looks like when we raise it up in front of us. So with that being the case here, the two positions that I'm looking at here that Fiore talks about is Posta Longa and Posta Frontale. And both these positions are drawn in the manuscript as far as being extended outward with either one hand or two hands. Now, one of the things out there that I personally think that needs to be in consideration here that maybe the manual doesn't necessarily show is that anatomically we look at this right here as far as what they may look like and what we can do to and how they may change different things about us. Of course, again, a real fight is going to be a lot more dynamic, a lot more kinetic, and a lot more it's not going to be exactly in a picture frame piece out here, but we study that to go into different portions. So let's talk about Posta Longa. So Posta Longa itself starts off, and again, whether it's right foot forward, left foot, I don't care about that. I'm talking about anatomy. The longest way that we have here, as far as our body can go, if I have my foot forward, my foot is right on that toe line right here. We did that in some of the previous episodes. This right here, I can extend myself as long as I possibly can by turning out the rear leg 90 degrees to the front leg. Now you notice right here, if I'm trying to keep my hand forward like this is the longest I will ever be anatomically as far as my arm and feet being together. Of course, I can lean, there's other things I can do here. I'm not here to argue that. I'm talking about within structure, keeping that Segno in mind as far as how we build up our posture. If I turn open this foot, and still keep this forward, you can already see, just by turning my foot forward here, it automatically pulls my hips forward and shortens this length. Now for those that may be trying this at home, you may also observe like, wow, this puts it all on the shoulder, and when I come like this, it puts it all right here into the glute. So my observation anatomically is if I'm talking about the longest I will ever be, structure-wise, this right here is as long as I'll ever be, and is also the most structured I will be. It works for both sides of the feet. If I talk about Posta Frontale, now Posta Frontale typically is shown as a drawing like this right here. My feet are now train tracked forward. So similar like how I did right here, I just turn my foot here and I bring my hand in, right? So with my hands being like this right here, I am in a position that once again, I am the longest I will ever be in this structure. Of course, once again, I can lean. There's other things I can do to contort my body, but that's not what I'm talking about. By being right here in this position, how I am standing, if I decide to open up this foot and I want my hand still projected forward, then notice again how there's a trade-off. This hand becomes shorter back, and this one becomes projected forward. You also might feel that as you go backwards like this right here, there's pinching going up into the shoulder. At least that's what I experienced. Play with this as you go. So essentially, my findings is that the strongest structure that I ever be with frontale is when I have both of my feet train tracked forward and my hands extended in that direction. So what does this do for us? Well, let's turn back to the Segno. If I put myself forward here, I've got my toes right along that middle line right here, and my left foot's right here along the fendente sottai line. You can see immediately when I do this right here, I have a horizontal line in front of me, and when I turn, my hands automatically start to shift and I start to create some of the angles that you might see, that you see within Fiore's sword blows. To illustrate this further, I can hold the sword like this, right? And if I turn, you can see again, automatically it starts to turn offwards this way. Now, if I take the sword and I place it out in hands in front, again, and I let the sword just kind of go, so the tip is going to fall into the direction of how I turn. So when I'm standing here like this, and I open up this foot again, so again, I'm forward right here. This is the longest I am with my hands forward, both hands on the sword. The moment I open up that foot, you can see the sword, because my left hand pulls back, automatically creates an angle. Now for this, I'm not doing a full 90-degree turn. I'm sitting back here, and it creates an angle. The other thing too is it also allows me to keep this foot motion. I'm still grounded in this way, and I have the ability to pass forward, which keeps us true to our Segno. So why is this important? Essentially, before we start talking about any cuts or any actions out of this way, we have to know about projections of the sword. And while I'm like this right here, if this sword is straight in front of me and I open my foot up like this, well, essentially I am creating my sottani line and fendente line. I'm creating also my thrusting line. I'm also seeing how I may cut and empower that left leg to do this. Because if I'm like this right here, well, now I'm starting to put everything in my back. I have to allow stable turning of my feet to do things. We're going to get into that more later on, but for right now, this is just to play with the two posta, Posta Longa, Posta Frontale, and see what anatomically happens to the body naturally because of how we have to do as far as keeping structure with the Segno in mind about our four animals and what happens when we put a sword in our hand. So play with that at home and see what you think about it. So you can see what I'm getting at in regards to how Posta Longa and Posta Frontale anatomically shift in our body. And if you are trying this at home, please first start off with just your hands and start to see what you find as far as how our hips and our shoulders and our spinal alignment are all factors right here that allow us to keep within structure as if we're utilizing the Segno. A quick note here, I put up my image like I did the previous week here, and mind you, that is my best rendering as far as what I've seen within his manuscript as far as like how he lays out his swords. I have a personal thought about what the Segno looks like as far as like as a reference point to teaching, as well as what his actual Segno looks like, and we'll talk about later on when we start talking about the blows of the sword. You got to remember that a lot of his lines that he's talking about are actually, I think they're quite steep. So again, I put that up there as a reference point for people can see where how structures and strikes work in that place. It didn't always line up this way, but for the most part, I find them to be pretty true as far as the alignment piece goes. Anyway, like I said, this was not to argue with anyone out there that that may or may not be able to do amazing things with their body. That everybody's different with this all, but it is to shed some light here in regards to some of the hidden lessons that we might find within Fiore's works and what benefits we might have with it. I know personally for me, when I started working more within my structure and keeping out this way, I stopped having some of the pains I was having because of my practice with historical fencing. So if this helps someone else in their journey, great. And if it helps you on your journey out there, please consider liking and subscribing. Leave a comment below. Would love to hear your thoughts on this right here as far as like what this kind of inspires you. Maybe you've never seen this before. Maybe you have seen this before. Love to hear your thoughts out there. And consider sharing with a friend. Maybe someone else there wants to get into historical martial arts and doesn't know exactly what to do with this. And these videos here are to hope to inform on that. But regardless, until next time, everybody, please stay safe, train well, and fight on.